Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Robert Romano, and welcome to Module 1, Name, Image, and Likeness, and the Student Athlete. And to begin our discussions today, we're going to talk about the two tiers of competition that happen on college campuses. The first tier is that recreational type of sport, right? The intramurals, sports that happen within a campus. Club sports, competitions between dorms, competitions between sororities, competitions between frats, that kind of thing. Widespread participation, but not a lot of revenue being generated. This type of sport. All right. The second tier of competition we're going to talk about is intercollegiate athletics, right? Intercollegiate sport. Sport between universities, sport between St. John's and Creighton, St. John's and UConn, St. John's and Georgetown, so to speak. Right? And these sports are typically sanctioned by a governing body. And in the United States, we have several governing bodies, one of the well-known one being the NCAA. But there are other governing bodies, the NAIA and JCCA. And they have, in the NCAA, has jurisdiction over this type of sport, right? 100 plus thousand people coming out to a football game on a Saturday afternoon, and jurisdiction over the student athletes who actually play the game on the field of play. All right, so in the U.S., we have approximately 4,700 colleges and universities that serve more than 20 million students themselves. Roughly a quarter, 1,150, are members of the NCAA. You got to remember, the NCAA is a voluntary organization. Your college or university does not need to be a member of the NCAA. You choose to be a member. All right. But that being said, the NCAA is the largest governing body over college athletics in the United States, having jurisdiction over approximately 500,000 student athletes. And these student athletes are competing in all forms of sanctioned sports: American football, soccer, basketball, and even such sports as archery and beach volleyball. All right, so the NCAA, it's been around for roughly 120 years or so, established in March of 1906. It is a not-for-profit institution. Remember that. It's a not-for-profit institution, voluntary. Colleges and universities do not need to be a member of the NCAA. It's completely voluntary. And the NCAA is a private organization, right? It's not a public institution, not owned or responsible to the government at all. The NCAA's role in intercollegiate sport, basically to establish rules. All right, they establish rules regarding recruitment of student athletes, financial aid, how the scholarship system works, the athletic academic performance of a student athlete. But they also are there to govern the playing rules and how competitions are organized. And then finally, to organize championships for each sport. But over the last 120 years or so, the NCAA has put in rules regarding this concept of amateurism that we hear so much about, and specific rules regarding the student athlete and how they can or cannot, for the most part, monetize their name, image, and likeness. All right. So the NCAA divided into three divisions. D1, we're D1. St. John's University is a D1 university. There are approximately 351 D1 schools in the United States. To be a D1 school, the NCAA says to the university, you must offer at least 14 sports. All right, so at least 7 for men and at least 7 for women. And you have to offer a number of scholarships per our required number of scholarships that we allow you. All right, so then D1 is further divided into FBS and FCS, football bowl schools and football champion schools. All right, to be an FBS school, the NCAA requires you to have at least 16 sports, offer at least 16 sports, 8 for men, 8 for women. Right now, there are about 130 colleges and universities in the U.S. that consider themselves FBS schools. All right, the NCAA is further divided into D2, which the NCAA requires, in order to be a D2 school, you have to offer at least 10 sports, 5 for men, 5 for women. Limited number of athletic scholarships, but D3, no athletic scholarships. All right, roughly 443 schools are D3 schools. From there, you can see how it's broken down. Right, D1 is about 184,000 participants, D2 about 124,000 participants, and D3 almost 200,000 participants, rounding out to a little over 500,000 student athletes competing under the jurisdiction of the NCAA. All right, from there, it's broken down even further into individual conferences. Right, in D1, D1 is dominated pretty much by the Power 5, Power 4 now conferences, the Southeast Conference, Big 10, ACC, Big 12. We'll see what happens regarding the Pac-12 over the next 6 months or so. St. John's, we're part of the Big East, primarily a basketball conference, not considered one of the Power 5. And from there, you got to think about all the revenue that is generated by the different layers within these institutions, within the conferences, and within the NCAA. So let's break this down for a little bit. All right, so the first layer of revenue generation at D1 schools is generated similarly to how professional sports generate income, right? Ticket sales, gate. When I say gate, I mean parking and concessions. Sponsorships, right? I'm the official sponsor of the NFL. I'm the official sponsor of NCAA. Merchandise and licensing, right? We all wear gear. But for the most part, a lot of revenue is generated at D1 schools through media rights. All right, they sell the media rights, the right to broadcast the games to a network. Then that network broadcasts the games, and in return, they try to get a return of investment through commercials and carriage fees, those kind of things. All right, but on top of that, D1 schools also have another form of revenue generator. And that comes through donations from boosters and alumni. And this is where we're going to get into these collectives, these NIL collectives that are out there. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a few weeks down the road during this course. All right. But so D1 schools can generate money, generate revenue, similarly to how professional teams do, professional leagues do. They also can generate money through donations through boosters and alumni. And through these collectives. All right, second layer of revenue is through the NCAA itself. The NCAA generates a ton of revenue per year. And with a lot of this money coming from the NCAA men's basketball tournament we affectionately refer to as March Madness. The NCAA has monetized this to the point where the agreement that they have with CBS and Turner, the two networks who broadcast March Madness, those networks have to pay the NCAA roughly $1 billion per year. All right. To broadcast these games, CBS and Turner pay the NCAA roughly $1 billion per year for this 3-week basketball tournament. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money coming in. On top of that, the football contract with ESPN to broadcast the bowl games at the end of the football season, that generates another $5.6 billion over 12 years, roughly $475 million per year. That's a lot of money coming in. Right? We're talking about $1.5 billion per year just from basketball and football, and predominantly men's basketball. All right, women's basketball is starting to generate revenue, just not at the scale of men's yet, but it will get there. Okay. All right, third layer of revenue. Conferences and some individual schools have their own media right deal. Right, so think about this. The SEC, on top of everything else, the SEC sells the rights to ESPN and CBS to broadcast their games, their postseason football games and basketball payouts. That generates approximately $4.1 million per year. But with the contract extension this year, it boosted it up to $70 million per year. So that's per school per year, getting roughly $70 billion just for every school in the SEC. All right. So think about that. All this revenue is coming into sport, right? Coming into sport through different means. The student athletes are the ones that are playing the sports. But the NCAA has jurisdiction over you, right? And they set the rules, right? The NCAA sets rules, and they set the rules regarding how an athlete can come to campus, how they can be recruited, by whom and by when, who may contact you, all that good stuff. All right, and they also tell you what benefits you can get while visiting or part of a university. All right, so the first thing they talk about is the athletic scholarship that is offered to recruit. Right, so you're an athlete, you get offered a scholarship. The NCAA says, nope, wait a minute, before we go too much further, we're only going to allow a college or university to offer a number of scholarships, right? We're going to limit the amount that a school can offer, right? 83 to 85 for football, 13 for basketball. These are NCAA rules. These are not university rules. But the NCAA says, all right, because roster sizes are a little bit larger than 13 for basketball, we're going to allow you to partial those. All right, you can give a full scholarship, or you can give a part scholarship, half, quarter, if you wish. They also say scholarships can only be offered for 1 year. They've changed that rule over the last 10, 12 years to say an institution can offer a multi-year scholarship. We're not going to enforce that. We're not going to require that. But if you want to, that school can offer you a multi-year scholarship. If they don't, then it's a 1-year renewable. All right, renewable at the school's discretion. All right, so a breakdown here, just real quick. The number of scholarships that the NCAA allows a member institution to offer. Look at baseball, right? Average roster size is about 36. They only allow 11.7 scholarships. Men's basketball, average roster size 16, only 13 scholarships, and so forth and so on. Softball, average roster size about 22, only 12 scholarships. Okay, so athletic departments have to do some finagling, giving half, quarter scholarships to make sure that they can field the team. Once a student athlete is offered a scholarship, most times they have to assign a national letter of intent. Revocable by the school. Student athlete, though, once you sign, you are committed to that school. What that scholarship includes typically is the cost of tuition, room and board, so to speak, and any essentials, books, computers, those kind of things. But when you sign that national letter of intent, and when you sign and say you're going to accept this scholarship, you also give up certain rights. And what the NCAA has said over the last 100 years or so was when you accept that scholarship, you are also turning over your right of publicity to us. Okay, what do I mean by that? What is a right of publicity? Right of publicity rule is that a person's name, image, or likeness, right, your bella figura, cannot be used without your consent in a commercial endeavor. It is the inherent right of every human being, right, every one of us, me included, to control the commercial use of his or her own identity. So, the right of publicity says you own your name, image, and likeness. But the NCAA has said over the first 100 years or so was, listen, once you accept that scholarship from us, once you sign that national letter of intent, you're transferring over that right to us. And now we own it. Okay, that's ours. You, therefore, cannot use it and monetize it. That has changed. All right, but up until 2021, that was the NCAA's position. You accept the scholarship, you give us your right of publicity, we own it, you cannot monetize it. Up until O'Bannon. All right, then O'Bannon came on the scene. All right, O'Bannon versus the NCAA. Quickly, going over this case, Ed O'Bannon was a professional basketball player, but he played college basketball for UCLA, and when they won their 1995 NCAA championship, he was College Player of the Year. He noticed some years later that the NCAA sold his rights to EA Sports, sold name, image, and likeness of all basketball players to EA Sports, so EA Sports can create the video game involving college basketball. He's saying, whoa, wait a minute. Hey, that's me. That's me in this game. That's me playing the game on one side. That's me in the EA Sports game on the other side. That's my name, image, and likeness. You're using that in a commercial endeavor, video games, without my consent. What are you doing here? You can't do this. The NCAA said, no. When you gave us that scholarship, UCLA gave you that scholarship, you transferred those rights over to the NCAA. We own them. We can sell it and monetize it. So they had a dispute. Ed O'Bannon, not being happy with how things are working out, decided to sue the NCAA on two grounds: the Sherman Antitrust Act, and secondly, for them violating his right of publicity, saying you cannot use my bella figura, my name, image, and likeness, without my consent. I played basketball in 1995. You're monetizing it in 2008. You can't do that. So in 2009, he files a lawsuit, and roughly 6 years later, the U.S. District Court in California said, yeah, you're right, Ed O'Bannon. They are using your name, image, and likeness without your consent in a commercial endeavor. Therefore, you and everyone else who was part of this suit became a class action. is entitled to compensation. Right? And the U.S. District Court ordered the NCAA and its member institutions to pay cost of attendance, living expenses not currently paid by the university. I can understand before 2014, scholarships were a little bit short. Because of Ed O'Bannon, that's changed. Now they have to cover living expenses that weren't necessarily being paid by the member institutions up until 2014. But more importantly, just as important, the court also said, you know what, since you violated their right of publicity, you need to put into trust $5,000 for each athlete who was part of these EA Sports. All right, for every image you used, you got to put $5,000 away for that student athlete. Okay, not too bad. The NCAA, not being happy with this, appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals next year said, yeah, you're right. Ed O'Bannon, we agree with you. We don't agree with the NCAA. They did use your right of publicity without your consent in a commercial endeavor. We're going to force schools to pay your living expenses, but this $5,000 thing, that's off the table. All right, that's not going to be part of the case anymore. So that $5,000 went away. So a lot of people at this time, right, they were saying, well, what good was O'Bannon then? Well, what did it actually do? A lot of academics are out there, well, nothing has really changed. Well, things did change because people took notice. All right, a lot of people started becoming involved in this, started looking at it going, whoa, student athletes are out there every day on the pitch, on the court, on the field of play. They're getting a scholarship. Okay, there's some value there. But are they getting a fair value? So people started taking notice, especially since all the revenue that is being generated through the NCAA, the BCS, the conferences, and the schools themselves. So in 2019, the state of California decided to implement the Fair Pay to Play Act, which basically said student athletes, in California, because that's only where the jurisdiction was, right? This is the state of California law. Student athletes can be compensated for the NIL without fear of losing either their NCAA eligibility or their scholarships. So the Fair Pay to Play Act was implemented in 2019. Hold on. It was enacted in 2019. That said student athletes can monetize their NIL. And they also said since student athletes, could be taken advantage of in this area, we're also going to allow them to hire an agent to help them navigate this field, right? This area. So, the Fair Pay to Play Act came into play in 2019. However, what California did is said, well, we're not going to make this effective though for 4 years, all right, until January of 2023. All right. And most importantly, it does not require NCAA member institutions to actually pay college athletes, right? So there's no transfer of money. So the Pay to Play Act is kind of a misnomer. It's not pay to play. You're not getting paid for your time on the pitch, court, or field. You can make money by monetizing your NIL. All right, so this came into play 2019, not effective until 2023, to give the NCAA some time to come up with some rules to put into play to protect student athletes. The question is, did they do that? When California took the lead on this, the next year, 36 additional states passed legislation similar to California's, all with different start dates, all with different language. I put the tracker up on camera so you can see how each state is a little bit different. But Florida did something interesting. They said their start date is going to be a little bit earlier. It's going to be 2021, July 1st, 2021. And then something interesting happened. And another case, the NCAA versus Alston came into play. That was decided. And in that case, the student athlete said, you know what, the NCAA is taking advantage of student athletes. We're not getting paid to play. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Alston. And I said, based on the fact the NCAA violated the antitrust laws by limiting a student athlete's compensation. They didn't come out with any guidance on it, but they said, you know what, the NCAA is violating antitrust laws. So all these things coming down, all these state laws coming into play, with Florida's taking effect in July 1st of 2021, the Alston case. In 21, at the end of June, the NCAA Board of Governors said, listen, we're going to put our hands up. You know, we're gonna not actually implement a rule regarding name, image, and likeness. But what we're gonna do is say, listen, if your state has a law on the books that says you can monetize your NIL and you can hire an agent, so be it. We're not gonna violate you. We're not gonna take away your scholarships, anything like that. So it also said that you can get have an agent if you want, right? So basically the NAL didn't put in rules in play. They just said follow whatever your state rules are. Problem is, what if your state doesn't have a rule or a law on the books? Then it's the NCAA, well, listen to what your conferences say or listen to what your university, college or university says. All right, so that's basically NIL in a nutshell. All right, so the first roughly 100 years or so, the 115 years, the NCAA had control over a student athlete's name, image, and likeness. Because of the O'Bannon case and then the Alston case that followed, people took notice, and legislatures such as the one in California and then subsequently 36 other states said, listen, no, student athletes should be allowed to monetize at least their NIL, at least their name, image, and likeness. Maybe not pay for play, but at least, if they're out there and they want to sell their image to Nike or they want to sell their image to whomever, they should be able to monetize that without violating NCAA rules. And that's what happened on July 1st, 2021. The NCAA didn't put rules rules on the books. They just said follow whatever your state law is. Or if you don't have a state law, follow what your conferences or schools say are the rules. Fair enough? Some concerns. Like I said, if your state doesn't have a law on the books, but also international student athletes, there are specific rules regarding international student athletes which don't allow them to monetize their NIL. And this has to do with immigration laws and stuff like that. All right, so that's NIL in a nutshell. Beginning of it, how revenue is generated by the NCAA, by the conferences, and by the schools that are member institutions of the NCAA, how they have jurisdiction over a student athlete, how for the first 115 years or so, they said NIL is ours, not the student athletes. Student athletes can't monetize it. But because of O'Bannon, because of Alston, legislatures took notice, and those rules changed as of July 1st, 2021. All right. Any questions, comments? We can talk about it on Friday, or you can email me at romanor1@stjohns.edu, or feel free to even text me or call me on my cell, 203-777-9797. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing everybody on Friday. Thank you.